The human walked slowly through the strange alien city. The streets were alive with bright lights and endless voices. Creatures of every size and color moved around him. Some tall with silver skin, some short with scales, others with wings that fluttered in the air. He felt small among them, a stranger in a place that was not his own. The smell of burning fuel mixed with the scent of alien food, sharp spices and sweet smoke. Stalls lined the streets, selling things he could not even name, and yet, in this busy place, he felt completely alone. No one looked at him. No one cared that he was there. He kept walking, his boots echoing on the stone ground. He had no destination, no family, no reason to stay. He was just another human in a galaxy where humans were often overlooked. Then it happened, he felt it. A tiny pull at his sleeve, soft but desperate. He stopped at once, his heart jumping. He turned his head slowly. There she was, a small alien girl, no taller than his waist. Her skin pale with a faint glow, her eyes wide and shining like twin stars in the shadows. Her clothes were torn, her hands trembling, her voice almost lost in the noise of the crowd. She looked up at him and whispered, "Can I call you Dad?" The human froze, his breath caught in his throat. He stared at her, trying to understand what she had just said. Of all the things he expected to hear in this alien city, that was not one of them. He wanted to ask who she was, where she came from, why she would say such a thing. But his mouth stayed shut, his mind racing. The girl's small fingers clung to his sleeve, her grip stronger than her tiny frame suggested. She was scared. He could see it in her glowing eyes, and she was asking him, a stranger, for something that meant more than words. Around them the city kept moving. No one noticed her. No one cared that a child stood there, begging silently. The human felt his chest tighten. He knew what it meant to be alone. He had walked long enough with no one by his side. He had eaten meals in silence, slept under cold stars, and carried the weight of a life with no ties. And now this child was asking for something he himself had longed for once, family. But still, he hesitated. Why him? Why now? Was this some kind of trick? Was someone watching? He glanced around the street, searching for answers. Shadows shifted between the bright stalls. A pair of figures stood far back, their eyes on him and the girl. He could feel it, he was being watched. The girl whispered again, her voice breaking, "Please." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. And for a moment he saw not an alien child, but simply a child, small, lost, desperate for someone to hold on to. He knelt slowly, meeting her eyes, his voice low. "Why me?" She shook her head, unable to answer. Maybe she did not know. Maybe she only felt something in him. A strength, a kindness, a hope. Her tears slipped down her glowing cheeks, falling onto her torn clothes. She looked like she had been living in the shadows for a long time. The human's heart pounded. He wanted to walk away. He wanted to believe it was not his problem. But when he tried to pull his sleeve free, her tiny hand only tightened. He sighed, the weight of the moment pressing on him. He had fought battles before. He had stood against storms and hunger. But this was different. He stood again, looking around once more. The figures in the distance were gone. But he could still feel the eyes of the city. He leaned closer to her, his voice almost a whisper. "If I say yes, it will change everything." The girl said nothing, only looked at him, her eyes begging, her hand refusing to let go. The human felt a storm inside, fear and doubt clashing with something stronger, something he thought he had lost long ago. Hope. At last, he gave a small nod. Not a promise, not yet, but enough. The girl let out a tiny breath, relief softening her trembling. She stepped closer, still clutching his sleeve, her small frame almost hidden against him. The noise of the city faded, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was not walking alone. But deep inside he knew this was only the beginning. The tug on his sleeve had pulled him into a path he could not leave now. A path full of questions, dangers, and choices. As he took his first step forward with the girl beside him, He could not shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, that someone wanted her, and that soon, very soon, the real danger would come. The whisper in the dark had changed everything. The human walked with the small alien girl beside him, her hand still clinging tightly to his sleeve. She was so light that he barely felt her weight as she leaned against him. But her grip carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears. He led her away from the busiest streets, into a quieter path where the lights grew dimmer and the sounds of the city softened. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why did she call him Dad? And why did she look so broken? The girl stayed silent at first, her glowing eyes watching the ground as her small feet stumbled on the uneven stones. Her clothes hung loose and torn, the fabric stained with dust and something darker. She looked like she had not eaten properly in days, maybe longer. Finally, the human spoke, his voice firm but gentle. "What is your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Leary." The name was soft, almost fragile, as if saying it aloud might cause it to shatter. He nodded slowly, repeating it in his mind, trying to anchor her existence to something real. "Where is your family?" he asked, his steps slowing. The girl stopped walking, her small shoulders trembling. She lifted her head just enough for him to see her glowing eyes filled with pain. "I don't have one," she whispered. The words struck him harder than he expected. He waited, hoping she would explain, but the silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of alien engines in the night. "Did they leave you?" he asked, his voice low. Her lips trembled before she answered. "They left me because I am small, because I am weak. My people do not want me." The human clenched his fists at his sides, anger rising inside him. How could anyone abandon a child? But before he could speak, Leary continued, her voice shaking. "They said I was useless, they laughed. They threw food scraps to me like I was an animal. I tried to follow, but they pushed me away. So I stayed in the alleys. I learned to hide. I learned to be silent, or else they would hurt me." Her words painted a picture darker than the shadows around them. The human felt his chest tighten. He had seen cruelty before. He had seen war and hunger. But this, the rejection of a child by her own kind, was something that tore deeper. He stopped walking and knelt in front of her, his eyes meeting hers. "Leary," he said softly, "you are not useless. Do you hear me?" She stared at him, confused, as if the words were foreign. No one had told her that before. Her hands shook as she gripped his sleeve tighter. "But I am small. I cannot fight. I cannot work. They said I should have never been born." The human felt the storm in his chest grow stronger. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Listen to me. I do not care what they said. You are alive, you are here, and that means you matter." Her glowing eyes widened, shimmering with unshed tears. She tried to speak, but only a small sound escaped her lips, a sound caught between a sob and a breath of relief. He stood again, lifting her gently onto his arm. She was lighter than he expected, fragile like glass, but she held on to him with surprising strength, her small head resting against his chest as if it was the only safe place she had ever known. As he carried her through the narrow path, he felt her body trembling, not from fear this time, but from exhaustion. She had lived too long in the cold alleys, too long without warmth, too long without someone to say she mattered. But then he felt it again, that sharp sense of being watched. His eyes scanned the rooftops, the dark corners, the market shadows. He saw nothing. Yet the feeling refused to leave him. Leary whispered faintly against his chest. "They don't want me, but others do. They said they would take me. They said I was worth something, not because they care, but because I glow." The human froze mid-step, her words sinking in, worth something, not because of who she was, but because of what she was. His mind sharpened with sudden fear. He whispered, "Who said this?" Her tiny voice answered, "The traitors, the ones with black eyes and sharp teeth. They wanted to sell me. I ran, I hid, but they are always looking." The human's jaw tightened, It all made sense now. The eyes in the crowd, the shadows that lingered too long, the feeling of being followed. She was not just a lost child. She was prey in a city full of predators. He held her closer, his heart burning. She had chosen him not because he was the strongest, not because he was the closest, but because she felt something in him that told her he would protect her. As the night deepened, he entered a narrow alley and stopped under the broken sign of an old inn. He carried her inside, finding a corner where the noise of the city could not reach them. He gave her a small piece of food from his pack, watching her devour it as if it was the first real meal she had tasted in days. Her glowing eyes softened as she finished. She looked at him again, whispering with quiet hope, "Will you leave me too?" The human felt the words cut through him. He shook his head firmly. "No, Leary, I will not leave you." She leaned against him, closing her eyes, her small hand still gripping his sleeve even as sleep began to pull her away. The human sat in silence, watching her breathe, his mind heavy with thoughts. The shadows outside seemed to move, and he knew this was only the beginning. If the traitors wanted her, they would not stop, and by choosing to protect her, he had just stepped into a storm he could never turn back from. The night stretched on, but in that quiet corner, one truth was clear. The lost one had found him, and he could no longer walk away. The human woke before dawn, his instincts sharp. Years of surviving in strange lands had taught him to trust the quiet moments. The inn was still, but something about the silence felt wrong. He looked at the girl curled up on the floor beside him, her glowing eyes half closed in sleep, her tiny hand still clinging to the edge of his sleeve even in her dreams. He felt a pang of guilt. She should have been in a warm bed with blankets, with safety, not lying on the cold floor of a forgotten corner. Yet she had not complained, not once. It was as if she believed she deserved nothing more. He crouched beside her, whispering softly, "Leary?" Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly in the dim light. She blinked at him, confused and tired. But when she saw his face, she gave the smallest smile, a smile so fragile it broke his heart. "You should eat," he said, handing her another small piece of food from his pack. She took it with shaking hands, chewing slowly, savoring every bite as if afraid it might be her last. He studied her closely, her thin frame, the marks of hunger, the way her body shook even when she was still. This was no trick, no act. She was truly a child abandoned, unwanted, hunted. But the words from last night haunted him, traitors, black eyes, sharp teeth. They wanted her because she glowed. If he kept her with him, they would come. If he pushed her away, maybe she would slip back into the shadows and they would not follow him. Maybe. The human's thoughts grew heavy. This was the choice, stay and fight for her or leave and save himself. He knew the moment he accepted her as his own, his life would no longer be his. He would be marked, hunted, and maybe even killed. Leary noticed the silence. Her glowing eyes searched his face, her small voice trembling. "Do you want me to leave?" The words pierced through him. He shook his head quickly. "No," he said, firmer than he expected. But doubt lingered in his chest. She lowered her head. "Everyone leaves me," she whispered. "If you do, I will not cry. I will just hide again. I know how to hide." The human clenched his fists, his heart torn. He could walk away. It would be easier, safer. But when he looked at her, so small, so broken, he knew the truth. He could not walk away, not anymore. He knelt again, his voice low. "Listen, Leary, if I keep you with me, it will be dangerous. Those men who hunt you will not stop. They will come. They will try to take you, and I cannot promise it will be easy." Her glowing eyes met his, and for the first time he saw not fear, but a spark of something else, trust. "I do not care," she whispered. "I only care if you stay." The human's chest tightened. He had been alone for so long, drifting without purpose. And now this child, this fragile alien girl, was asking him for something no one else had in years. A bond, a promise. Before he could answer, a noise shattered the silence. Footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, heavy. The wood of the inn door groaned as if something pressed against it. The human reacted at once, pulling Leary close, placing a finger to his lips. "Quiet," he whispered. The girl nodded, burying her face against his chest, her tiny body trembling. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows moved under the door. Someone was there, waiting, listening. The human's instincts screamed at him. He could leave her now, slip out the back, vanish into the city before the hunters broke through. But when he looked at her again, her small hands gripping his shirt, her glowing tears sliding down her cheeks, he knew there was no choice left. He leaned close and whispered, "I will protect you, no matter what." Her eyes widened, her lips trembling. "So, you will stay?" "Yes," he said, the word heavy, final, like the strike of a hammer. "I will stay." The door rattled, claws scraping against the wood. A low growl echoed from outside. The human stood, placing Leary behind him, his hand reaching for the small blade strapped to his side. Not much against what hunted them, but it was all he had. The noise outside grew louder, then stopped. Silence pressed against the walls. The human held his breath, his heart pounding. Leary clung to his sleeve again, whispering so faintly he almost missed it. "Dad." That one word, that fragile whisper, filled him with a strength he did not expect. He looked toward the door, ready for whatever was waiting. Minutes stretched like hours, then the footsteps slowly faded, retreating into the night. Whoever was out there had not broken through, but the message was clear. They had found her trail. It was only a matter of time before they returned. The human sat back down, his pulse still racing. Leary curled against him, whispering softly, "You stayed." He brushed her hair back gently, his voice quiet. "I told you I will not leave." Outside, the city roared with life, but inside that small room, everything had changed. He had made his choice, and it was not just to protect her. It was to fight for her, to stand against whatever shadows hunted her. And as he held her close, he knew this choice would cost him everything. But he also knew one thing more. For the first time in years, he was no longer alone. The morning light crept into the broken inn, but it did nothing to wash away the fear that lingered in the air. The human sat awake, his eyes sharp, every sound making him tense. Leary slept against his arm, her breathing soft, her glowing eyes hidden under her closed lids. She looked peaceful, but he knew peace was only an illusion. The footsteps from the night before were still in his mind. The scrape of claws against wood, the shadow under the door. He had faced dangers before, but this was different. This was not just about him anymore. It was about the small girl who now clung to him as if her life depended on it. And it did. When Leary stirred awake, she rubbed her eyes and whispered, "They came, didn't they?" The human nodded slowly. "Yes, but they did not enter, not yet." Her tiny face grew pale. She looked down, whispering in a voice heavy with fear, "They always find me, no matter where I go." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then this time, they will find me too, and I will not let them take you." Her glowing eyes widened, tears welling. No one had ever spoken for her like that. No one had ever promised to fight for her. She pressed her small hand against his sleeve again. The same gesture she had made the first night, holding on as if to say she believed him. But outside, the city was already changing. Whispers moved through the alleys. People spoke of strange hunters, tall beings with black eyes that reflected no light. Their skin pale as bone, their teeth sharp. They were looking for something, asking questions, offering credits to anyone who would give an answer. The human led Leary through the back streets, staying in the shadows, his every sense alert. He could feel eyes on them, hear footsteps that stopped when they stopped. The hunters were close, too close. At one corner, he caught sight of them, two tall figures dressed in dark robes. Their movements too smooth, too unnatural. Their black eyes scanning the crowd. One of them lifted his head, sniffing the air like a predator tracking its prey. The human pulled Leary into a narrow alley, pressing her small frame against the wall. His body shielding hers, she trembled, whispering, "It's them." He nodded, pressing a finger to his lips, urging silence. The hunters passed by, their shadows long and cold, their voices low, speaking in a language the human could not fully understand. But one word repeated again and again, "Glow." His stomach tightened. They were close, and they would not stop until they had her. They moved quickly after that, slipping from alley to alley, never staying in one place too long. The human could feel the weight of every decision. Every step, if he made one mistake, the hunters would find them. At midday, they reached the edge of the market, crowds thick and noisy. The human thought they could blend in. But then he heard it, a shout, sharp and clear. There, the glowing one. His heart jumped. He grabbed Leary's hand and pulled her through the crowd. The market erupted in chaos, stalls crashing, creatures shouting. The hunters pushing through with inhuman strength. Leary's eyes glowed brighter in her panic, drawing attention. The human tried to cover her, but the hunters were relentless. Their black eyes locked on her. They ran through the narrow paths, the hunters chasing, their footsteps heavy, their growls echoing off the stone walls. The human's lungs burned, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Finally, he pushed into another alley, his hand pressing against a loose door. It gave way, and he pulled Leary inside, slamming it shut behind them. They fell into darkness, the only light her faint glow. Her small voice shook. "They know. They will never stop." He crouched down, pulling her close, whispering fiercely, "Then let them come, because I will not give you up." The hunter's footsteps passed by the door, slow, searching, their claws dragging against the walls as if they could smell her. But after long moments, they faded again, disappearing into the distance. The human exhaled slowly, but he knew this was only borrowed time. The hunters would not rest, not until they had her. Leary pressed her face against his chest, whispering, "Why do they want me?" He stroked her hair gently, his voice low. "Because you are rare, because you are special. But they do not see you as a person, only as a prize to be sold." Tears ran down her glowing cheeks. "Then I wish I didn't glow." The human's heart ached at her words. He lifted her chin so she would meet his eyes. "Listen to me, Leary. Your glow is not a curse. It is who you are, and they will not take it from you. Do you understand?" She nodded weakly, but the fear still lingered. She was small, fragile. But in her eyes there was also something else now. A tiny spark of hope. That night, as the city lights flickered outside, the human sat awake again, his blade resting across his lap. Leary curled against him, breathing softly. He knew what had to come next. He could not keep running forever. The hunters were not going to stop, and if he wanted to protect her, he would need to stand, fight, and face them. He looked down at her small, sleeping face, her glowing light softening the darkness, and whispered to himself, "They will not have you, not while I live." The choice was made. The hunters had marked her, but now they had also marked him, and he would show them what it meant to stand against a human who refused to let go. The night was long, filled with whispers of danger. The human did not sleep, his hand never leaving the hilt of his blade. Outside the city still roared, but to him it sounded like the growl of a beast waiting for its prey. Beside him Leary slept in broken dreams, whimpering softly, clutching his sleeve even in her sleep. By dawn he knew they could not stay. The hunters had already found their trail once. It was only a matter of time before they returned, stronger, ready to corner them. The human had survived too many battles to ignore the signs. Staying meant death. Leaving was their only hope. He touched Leary's shoulder gently, whispering, "Wake up, little one, we must move." Her glowing eyes blinked open, fear filling them before she even spoke. "Are they coming?" "Yes," he said firmly. But we will not be here when they do. She nodded weakly, still half asleep, her small body trembling as he lifted her into his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her head against his chest, whispering, "Don't leave me. Never." He answered without hesitation, his voice low and certain. The streets were quieter in the early light, mist curling through the alleys, merchants setting up their stalls, unaware of the danger that moved through their city. The human kept to the shadows, moving quickly but carefully, his eyes scanning every corner, every rooftop. Leary's faint glow was both a gift and a curse. It lit his path but also risked revealing them. He pulled his cloak tighter around her, hiding the light. She clung to him without a sound, trusting him completely. They slipped through back ways and abandoned paths, but even as they moved, the human could feel it. The hunters were not far. The city itself seemed to betray them. Whispers spread, eyes lingered too long. He saw a merchant glance at Leary's glow and quickly look away, fear in his eyes. The human's heart tightened. The hunters had promised rewards, and fear made people speak. It was only a matter of time before someone pointed the way. By midday, they reached the edge of the docks, where broken ships lay forgotten, wooden planks creaking under the weight of the tide. Here the air smelled of salt and rust. Few people came this far. It was a place of ruins, a place of ghosts. "This is where we hide," the human whispered, setting Leary down on her feet. She looked around nervously, the empty docks stretching into the mist. "Are we safe here?" she asked softly. He crouched beside her, shaking his head. "Safe, no, but safer than in the open. We will rest for a moment, and then we keep moving." Leary nodded, but her small hands reached for his sleeve again, as if even in this moment of pause, she could not let him go. But before he could answer, a sound broke the silence. The sharp crack of wood under weight, heavy footsteps echoing across the docks. The human froze, his body stiffening. "They found us," Leary whispered, her glow flickering brighter with fear. The human grabbed her hand, pulling her behind a stack of crates, peering through the cracks. He saw them, 3 hunters moving across the docks, their black eyes shining in the mist, their teeth glinting as they sniffed the air. One of them growled, "She is close. The glow is near." The human's heart pounded. He knew hiding would not last long. They had tracked her across the city. They would not stop now. His blade felt small in his hand, but he gripped it tight, determination burning in his chest. He whispered to Leary, "When I tell you, you run. Do not stop. Do not look back. I will be right behind you." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. She shook her head fiercely. "No, I will not leave you. Not ever." The human swallowed hard, his chest aching at her words. He pulled her close, whispering into her hair, "Then stay behind me, and no matter what happens, hold on." The hunters drew closer, their steps slow and deliberate. They knew she was near. The human took a deep breath, his eyes sharp, his body ready. Suddenly one of the hunters roared, pointing toward the crates. "There!" The human did not wait. He grabbed Leary, pulling her into the open and ran. His boots slamming against the wooden planks, the hunters let out cries of fury, chasing them with inhuman speed. The docks became a maze of broken ships and tangled ropes. The human darted between them, his breath heavy, his arms tight around Leary, her glow breaking through his cloak as fear made it brighter. The hunters closed in, their claws scratching wood, their growls echoing. "Faster," Leary whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, faster." The human's lungs burned, his muscles screamed, but he did not slow. He could not. Behind them one of the hunters leapt, landing close, claws slashing at the air. The human turned sharply, nearly stumbling, but he kept running. At the far end of the dock, he saw it. A half-sunken boat, its hull cracked but still floating. It was their only chance. He sprinted toward it, the hunters gaining, his every step shaking the wooden boards. With a final push he leapt onto the boat, pulling Leary down with him. The old vessel groaned, rocking in the water. The hunters stopped at the edge of the dock, snarling. Their black eyes locked on them. One of them hissed, "You cannot run forever, human. She is ours." The human held Leary close, his voice strong despite the fear. "She is not yours. She will never be yours." The boat drifted slowly into the mist, the hunters watching, their growls echoing across the water. They would not give up, he knew that, but for now, they had escaped. Leary buried her face against his chest, her voice breaking with relief. "You didn't let them take me." He pressed a hand to her back, whispering firmly, "And I never will." The mist swallowed them, but he knew the fight was far from over. The hunters would come again, stronger, more determined, and next time, running might not be enough. Still, as he looked down at the small glowing girl in his arms, clinging to him with all her strength, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. No matter where they had to go, no matter what hunted them, he would never let her face it alone. The boat drifted through the mist, the water slapping softly against its sides. The human sat at the edge, blade in hand, his eyes never leaving the fog around them. Leary sat beside him, her glowing eyes wide and frightened, her small hand gripping his arm tightly. Hours passed, but the hunter's words still echoed in his mind. "You cannot run forever, human." He knew they were right. He could not keep fleeing through cities and docks. No matter how far they went, the hunters would follow. They had her scent, her glow, her fear. He looked down at Leary, her face pale, her body trembling from exhaustion. She leaned against him, whispering, "Will they come again?" "Yes," he admitted, his voice steady. "And when they do, we will face them." Her glowing eyes widened. "But they are stronger." He brushed her hair gently back, his voice low but firm. "Stronger does not always mean they win. Sometimes, the one who refuses to give up is the one who stands last." The boat finally scraped against the far side of the docks, where abandoned warehouses loomed like dark giants. The human helped Leary step onto the broken planks, her small body stumbling from fatigue, but she did not let go of his sleeve, not even for a second. They moved into the silence of the old docks, the air heavy with the smell of rust and salt. Ships lay broken, ropes hung loose, doors swung open in the wind. It was the perfect place for an ambush. The human knew it. He guided Leary into one of the larger warehouses, its roof half collapsed, sunlight cutting through the dust-filled air. He stopped in the center, his blade still in his hand, his jaw set. Leary looked up at him, confused. "Why here?" He crouched down to her level, his eyes sharp. "Because we cannot keep running. If we do, they will catch us when we are weakest. Here we choose where to stand. Here we fight." Her tiny face trembled, fear in her glowing eyes. "Fight?" she whispered. "But you could die." He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady. "Maybe, but if I do nothing, they will take you, and that I will never allow." Her lips trembled, tears building. Why do this for me?" He stared into her glowing eyes, his voice heavy with truth. "Because you called me Dad, and I said yes." She gasped softly, her tears falling. She wrapped her arms around him, pressing her small frame against his chest, whispering into his shirt, "Then I will not let go, not ever." The moment was brief, for outside, the silence broke, heavy footsteps echoed, claws scraping against wood. The hunters were here. The human pulled Leary gently behind him, standing tall, blade in hand. The shadows moved at the edges of the warehouse, and then they appeared, 3 hunters stepping into the light, their black eyes unblinking, their teeth sharp, their voices low and cold. "She glows." One of them hissed, "Give her to us and live, human." The human stepped forward, placing himself fully between them and Leary, his voice strong. "If you want her, you will have to go through me." The hunters laughed, a deep, chilling sound. their claws flexing. You are nothing but flesh and bone, human. We are many, we are stronger. But the human did not move, his grip on his blade tightening. I have faced storms, I have faced war, I have faced death itself, and still I am here. If you think I will fall easily, you are wrong. Behind him, Leary's small hand clutched his sleeve again, her voice trembling. Dad! That single word gave him a fire inside. Stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. The hunters spread out, circling, their shadows sliding along the broken floor. Their black eyes fixed on him. The human's heart pounded, but his resolve was iron. He would not run this time. He would not yield. The first hunter lunged, claws slicing through the air. The human ducked low, his blade flashing, striking across the creature's arm. Dark blood sprayed. The hunter roared in fury, staggering back. The others moved in, fast and deadly. The human blocked one strike, his blade ringing against claw. Another slashed at his side, tearing his cloak. Pain seared his skin, but he stood firm, refusing to fall. Stay behind me, Leary, he shouted, his voice echoing through the warehouse. She pressed herself against the wall, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Yet she did not look away. She refused to let him stand alone. The hunters pressed harder, their speed overwhelming, their growls filling the air. But the human fought with everything he had, his blade moving like fire, his body driven not by strength alone, but by the burning will to protect the small girl who called him Dad. One hunter lunged again, jaws wide. The human met it head-on, slamming his blade upward. The creature fell back, shrieking in rage, but the human was wounded, blood running down his side, his breath heavy, his knees trembling. He knew he could not hold forever. Then he felt it, that small hand gripping his sleeve again. Leary's voice breaking through the chaos. Don't give up. He looked back at her glowing eyes, full of fear but also full of trust. And in that moment he felt something ignite inside him. He turned back to the hunters, his voice a growl. I will never give her to you, never. The hunters paused, their black eyes narrowing. Sensing his unyielding will, one of them hissed, Then you will die for her. The human raised his blade higher, his body shaking but his spirit unbroken. Then I will die as her father. The warehouse shook with their roars as they charged again. The human stood tall, his blade flashing, his heart burning, ready to give everything in this stand. And in the shadows behind him, Leary's glow grew brighter, brighter than ever before, as if her very soul was answering his courage with her own. The warehouse shook with the roar of the hunters. Claws slashed, wood splintered, dust filled the air. The human stood at the center, his blade flashing, his body already bleeding, but his eyes burning with fire. Behind him, Leary's glow grew brighter, filling the broken space with a strange light. The first hunter lunged again, its black eyes wide with rage. The human met it with a desperate strike, steel against bone. The creature howled, stumbling back, dark blood dripping onto the floor. The others closed in, circling, growling, their voices like whispers of death. You cannot win, human, one hissed. Give her and we will let you live. The human spat blood to the ground, his blade trembling but still raised. You will never have her, not while I breathe. Behind him, Leary pressed her glowing hands against the wall, fear flooding her small body. But when she saw his wounds, saw the way he stood, unbroken, something stirred in her heart. She whispered, Please, don't leave me. Her glow flared suddenly, brighter than ever before. The hunters paused, their black eyes narrowing, the light reflected in their faces. Burning, one of them hissed in anger. The glow grows stronger. She must be taken. The human looked back at Leary, her small body shaking, but her light pouring out as if it answered his fight. Her eyes wide and wet with tears, yet in them, he saw not only fear, but courage. The hunters rushed forward together, claws raised. The human shouted, his voice like thunder. "Stay back." His blade cut through the air, meeting them head-on. The clash echoed like fire and steel. He fought with everything left in him, his wounds tearing wider, blood soaking his clothes. But he did not fall. Each strike, each block, each desperate move was not for himself. It was for the girl behind him, the girl who called him Dad. One hunter broke past his guard, claws raking his shoulder. He staggered, pain searing. But before the creature could strike again, Leary screamed, her glow exploding into the room. The light was blinding, pure and fierce. It burned across the walls. The hunters shrieked, covering their faces, their black eyes smoking under the glow. They stumbled back, their strength faltering. The human turned, stunned. "Leary!" She stood trembling, her hands outstretched, tears running down her glowing cheeks. "I don't want them to hurt you," she whispered, her small body shaking with the effort, the light pouring out of her like a shield. The hunters screamed in fury, slashing at the light, but their claws only met air, their bodies retreating, their shadows shrinking, the glow consuming them. The human saw his chance. He lunged forward, his blade striking true. One hunter fell with a cry, its body crashing against the broken floor. The others stumbled back, their voices filled with rage and fear. "This is not the end, human. She is ours. She will always be ours." But they fled, their dark forms melting into the shadows, their voices fading, leaving only silence. The human stood panting, his blade dripping, his body nearly broken. He fell to his knees, the weight of the fight finally crashing down. Leary ran to him, her glowing eyes wide with terror. "Dad," she cried, clutching his arm. "Don't go, please, don't go." He placed a bloody hand gently against her cheek, his voice weak but steady. "I'm not going anywhere, little one," she sobbed, her tears glowing brighter than her eyes, dripping onto his wounds, and strangely, the pain eased, not fully, but enough to breathe, enough to hold her close. The human pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, whispering into her hair, "You are safe, Leary. I will not let them take you. Not ever." She clung to him, shaking, whispering again and again, "You stayed, you stayed." The warehouse was quiet now, only the sound of the waves outside breaking the silence. The hunters were gone. But he knew in his heart they would return someday. Yet in this moment, he no longer feared them. He looked down at Leary, her face pressed against his chest, her glow softening now, warm instead of fierce, her tiny hands gripping him as if he was the only anchor in her world. He whispered, his voice low but firm, "Yes, you can call me Dad, because that is what I am now." Her glowing eyes lifted to his, tears still falling, but a small smile breaking through, the first true smile he had ever seen from her. "Then you are my dad, forever." He smiled faintly, his heart aching but full. Forever. The dawn light broke through the cracks of the warehouse, mixing with her glow, painting the room in gold. The human felt something he had not felt in years, something stronger than fear, stronger than pain. He felt belonging. The city was still dangerous. The hunters would return. The road ahead would be hard. But none of it mattered, not anymore, because he was no longer alone, and neither was she. Together they stepped out of the broken warehouse, the mist lifting, the world waiting, and as they walked side by side, her small hand clutching his sleeve, her glow lighting the way, the human knew this was the beginning of something new, something greater than survival. This was the beginning of a family.